Poggers, and welcome to another episode of the PogState in our glorious new location. We were kind of here last time as well, but we were just on the other end of the room. This is the maximized area. This is what we've done, and we are ready to go into some adjustments of predictions, talk about the state of the LCK, and to do that, I have with me, as always, Wolf, Chronicler, and Valdez. Gentlemen.
Vadles.
It is... What?
Sorry, that's my name for this episode is Vadles.
All right, we'll try to keep that in mind.
All right,
Okay,
Vadles.
thank you.
And wait, does that mean we all have to have...
No,
mess-
just
No,
Vadles.
Just me. No.
Can I be Talus?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Talus, Vadless, Wuffel, and...
Sweet
Wolford?
popcorn.
Sweet
Sweet popcorn.
Sweet popcorn.
There you go.
That's
All
an
right, perfect.
together.
That's an in joke. I think we're just going to go with the normal names, and that'll be fine. You guys have had a day. I had an off day today. Thank you to Valdez. I haven't been feeling super crash hot, and so Valdez came in and took away one of the greatest
medevac.
days of League of Legends from me, which I appreciate to no end. There's been upsets, been all sorts of crazy things, but I think first we need to talk about the state of our predictions because it's the end of round one. Firstly, I guess let's get our thoughts on what we did round one go as expected. You know, sweet popcorn.
Well, it's it's very obvious. Unfortunately, there was one big underperformance, and I have had in the past week, I still had faith that there would be a bounce back from obviously T1 because I had them second.
Oh.
I do think the bounce back will still be there. I also think it'll be in playoffs. I think the regular split, unfortunately, is kind of a bust, and I had them second. Outside of that, things are not looking bad. I think things will end up okay.
Yeah, I think other big things are D plus Kia having a really good run so far, 7-3 at the end of this week at least. They've always been like fourth place, fifth place, kind of like vying for a good team in playoffs, but they've always been just good. But now it feels like they've really hit their stride, and maybe they're going to actually be great. Actually, next week we do have Saturday Showdown Humble Life Esports versus D plus Kia. Make sure you do watch that this week. Should be very fun. So that's kind of going to decide. I mean, Humble Life Esports, even if they lose 2-0, they're still in second place. But, if D plus Kia beat them, then there's a chance that DK can overtake them in the standings eventually. So that's kind of a cool race we got going on. T1's the obvious one, as you mentioned, sweet popcorn.
We don't need to keep.
It's kind of
No, we do.
unfortunate, but at the same time,
Thank you, Vatlas.
T1 always have this slump in the middle of summer, and I'm not worried, and I'm going to say it's Gen G T1 finals until it's not.
It's a good play. Well,
I think for me, the big, we had them, most of us had them in fifth. Atlas had them in sixth, Guangdong Freaks, because they twice kind of outdid our expectations. We were thinking, okay, maybe a little bit middling. And then they were actually pretty good. And then ended up dropping off in a big way. And the question is, how far do they fall? Do they get back on the horse? Is it going to be Guangdong complete collapse, like 5, best of 3 losing streak? Because if they kind of middle out from here, they're in the middle of most of our preds and kind of works out.
So just to put in perspective, and this is what worries me, Guangdong's next week is, if I remember correctly, Gen G
Hanwha,
and
I think,
Hanwha
yeah.
Live.
oh,
And then BNK, who are currently 4 and 6, their next week is Bro and Nongshim. So I think there's a very realistic chance that BNK is going to overtake Guangdong. And last spring, Guangdong miraculously made it anyway. But I
yeah,
think
that's when we were all kind of hoping that it would
they
be
would-
the Live Sandbox resurgence, and it just didn't quite get over the line.
Yeah, and that 4th to 7th spot is. I mean, I can't really afford to swap any of that, but that's where I think the magic happens this time around, because between Guangdong, T1, KT, and BNK, do we really who's the best?
Ooh, that all depends because it depends where they are in relation to fifth. Because if
'Cause
they're
KT is
all
fifth.
under fifth, then KT is the best, and that's definitive. But
They actually
they're
are
not.
at 0. I thought you would appreciate that.
I know, yeah. I mean, I didn't because the games were terrible, and everything about it made me very upset. But outside of that, it is very good that they've hit equilibrium. I wanted to talk about BNK a little bit more because when do we like? And Wolf, you mentioned this on the space as well after the series. Like, when do you talk about them being a legit contender instead of this team that's blue shelling all over the place? Because as soon as like, if you blue shell everyone, then I guess you're first, right? Like that's sort of how it works. Like, is this team actually good? Like what?
I think they have figured out how to draft, not only in terms of the standard meta, but also what's good for them, and pick-based compositions and very easy CC chain follow-up type comps and dive setups are working very well for them, especially because it means that Henna doesn't have to actually put his carry pants on. He can kind of just be a passenger, and as much as I've been a big Henna defender here in our team, probably the biggest one, I feel like he has been pretty low impact this season and this year. So are they a contender team? Are they a strong team? They might be able to just eke into playoffs at like 6th place if they can continue this trend. But are they going to be threatening the likes of T1, D+, Hanwha? I think absolutely not. I just don't think they have the right macro reads. I don't think they have a stable enough core. Like, they're so reliant on this dive style that it's really easy to draft against them once they get a little bit more exposed.
Yeah, I would agree. I think BNK have reinvented what they did 2 years ago, and they're still, even though most of the roster is just closers still there, so that still works. I do expect that they'll have a really good next week, and then after that, I think they'll taper off a little bit. Really, for me, the main question is going to be two things, because I think Hanwha is actually pretty set for second. Mm-hmm. I think that right now they look super solid. There's still the normal Hanwha moments.
So you say that. There is the fact that D+ have already faced Gen G and Hanwha haven't. So sure. I think that actually, like, the D+ Hanwha is all about which one of these teams will get upset at some point throughout the season. And,
I think DK
and
is
if
more
no
likely.
one does, then Hanwha wins, right? Because they've got a better game score than DK at the moment.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it's sort of looking like at this point. But it's still, I think it's a lot. It's closer than even the standings would indicate right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think DK, obviously, I'm very happy that they're performing, because when they perform, it's Lucid Showmaker, which is kind of the best case scenario. But I think Hanwha right now do still feel like they are a little bit more versatile in what works for them.
Yeah.
Compared to DK. The fact that is a genuine contest, though, I think is such a step up. I think DK is one of our most improved rosters this split, which is really, really cool. And yeah, the unfortunate flip side of the coin is KT. We don't take any stock, I think, in them losing, because
No.
it's KT. I don't know if anyone has a different opinion. But
No.
but I think
here.
for Kwangdong and T1 both, in very, very different ways, it's for me about, like, I'm sure they will pull up eventually out of the nosedive, but when will that be?
Wait,
Yeah.
who pulls up?
Kwangdong.
They
Do
did. They did. I think they do. Yeah, they did last split.
They're
Did
going to
they?
pull out of the nosedive, and BNK Fearex, right at the very end, they're going to be like one game away. They just have to beat DRX, and then they're going to lose.
This is
2-0. Happens every year.
The Live Sandbox experience.
Yeah.
I live this. I'm not believing BNK.
I don't know why.
ever.
The LCK has some superstitions for a good reason, because they always happen.
Yeah,
But this is the thing, like, Kwangdong, though, last time set themselves up so well that even though they were still in full nosedive, they weren't out of the picture by the end of the season, right? So, like, what they were doing is they were coming down and then was like, and stop the video, and they were here. And, this is where the end of playoffs
Yeah.
is. But if we had kept the season going, they would have just plummeted through the floor.
You need about like a 40% win rate to make playoffs. So right now they're at 50, at 5-5. So, we'll see who they lose to in the coming days. Obviously, this is going to be a tough week, this upcoming week, as mentioned, Gen G and Hanwha. So you could drop to 5-7 there, and then how's your mental after that? Like, because that's the big question. Like, is CV Max starting to pull people in and out? Is it the quantum time? Is Bull coming back?
The Quantum
Taeyu,
Leaper?
the redemption arc. Sorry, that wasn't a funny
That
joke.
was not,
I'm
it's
sorry.
not even funny, Valdes.
Yeah, I
That's too
shouldn't have
much.
said that. Yeah.
Oh,
That's
God.
too
Sorry,
much, man.
I didn't mean it.
Pongyon?
Punyan's good.
Yeah, no,
I
he's
think Punyan is
legitimately
actually
good. Yeah, I know, but I still don't think he should be subbed in.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's
that's
good
that's
for
the question.
challengers.
Like,
Yeah.
if we get to that point and then the roster starts moving around, that's when I'm like, okay, we didn't learn. We haven't learned. We haven't changed. TV Max is going to do the same thing, and then they're going to drop, and then maybe we'll have that. Fearex can't actually pass them because they lose that important game, but they barely get into playoffs. But that's really what we don't know yet is like what happens in 2 weeks' time. Not even what happens next week, because I think we all confidently know that Gen.G and Hanwha should trounce them at this point.
Yeah.
If anything different than that happens, then we know nothing. But like, I don't think that's something we can expect.
Are we slowly getting like? Because I think this season has actually been pretty wacky, especially after this week in terms of tier listing. But so we have Gen.G. Gen.G feel like they're off on their own, and then we have what, like Hanwha, DK.
Yeah, we have 3 teams that have kind of established themselves as being pretty good.
But
one
I
of
feel
them
like,
being a bit better than pretty good. But
Yeah.
like 3 teams are in the like, we give them the stamp of like, I'd like to see these teams go off and represent our region at an international
then-
event.
well, I
then we
mean,
have the rest.
there's Peanut and Doran. I don't know about that, but
Oh, no,
they're
I-
making it.
Well, I'm down with like until they travel, I guess. Like, but that is completely different. Right now, I think Peanut especially is playing like an absolute monster, and Doran can do whatever he likes. It's top lane. Who cares?
And then it's like Kwangdong to BNK, so Kwangdong T1 KT BNK. That kind of feels right in how they're playing now.
I don't know if I would put T1 above KT right now.
No. I mean, that's a category. I'm not saying
Oh,
that's
yeah,
not in
that's
order.
the category. Yeah.
That's
those
a
are the 4
category of
teams.
teams.
Those are the 4
Yeah,
teams
yeah.
that
Where,
are
like-
vying for 4th place. Yeah.
Yeah, Kwangdong to BNK. Yeah.
That's BNK obviously wouldn't have been here, but after this week, they definitely
maybe Nongshim as well goes in that category.
They
I
have
want to
beaten DRX
emphasize.
twice.
I want to emphasize the fact that none of these teams have shown any sort of consistency, and so I think that there's an off chance Nongshim has a good run.
Max, don't-
They'll make it there,
KT
and that
had
I want
5
that
wins in
to
a
be
row.
like what.
KT had 5 wins in a row.
Max, don't-
that was
And then lost to
consistent.
BNK.
Max,
And they were
don't-
consistently not good, and then they were consistently
Max,
good.
don't do this. Don't give me hope for Nongshim, man.
I'm not
I
giving
want
you.
to believe.
I'm not giving you hope for Nongshim. I'm giving you context for the rest of these teams.
The
That's what I'm
Goat
doing.
is having a bit of a resurgence himself.
Yeah, man. Did you see that hook? That was sick. You know,
did
I
actually
thought
play well today.
Poppy always pulled you out of the team fight, but no.
He did press his unstoppable. He bellows breath
Well,
in the right moments. In front of people.
no, he did it one time. Otherwise, he just never did it. That's why they kept engaging on him, because he
Yeah.
didn't
No,
manage
he-
to do the mechanics
He did it-
over and over again.
He did it a few times. Sometimes the engage came after he used it
Yeah.
for another reason. Yeah, I I don't have as negative view. I think Nongshim seem like they've kind of getting it together. I think Gugur is not nearly as bad as he was 4 weeks ago, and Mihao is a lot better than All Reliable, unfortunately.
Yeah. I felt like Jiwoo had a pretty decent series today, too.
Yeah.
Good bounce back.
Compared to the utter
Keep making
disappointment.
this.
I was gonna keep making it until somebody had to, refer to the Alistair situation. But
Yeah.
I think what we have to do before we talk about swaps is to have the uncomfortable conversation that everybody
Oh, God.
is a little bit, no one really wants to do it, and it's very intense.
I don't
But
know where this is going.
this is the worst regular season split outside of an emergency or COVID situation that T1 has had in a very long time, where the draft reads are very incorrect, where the gameplay in-game is uncoordinated, where individual players are making massive mistakes, Carry and Faker notably. Zeus is not dominating lane matchups he should be dominating. Like, sometimes he does, but he doesn't do it consistently. And I think we hold T1 to such a high standard, right? It's always going to be the Gen.G T1 files. They're going to be top 2. Even if it looks bad now, like, they'll bounce back. But they haven't bounced back quickly. They've lost a lot of really important games, losing to KT, losing to BNK. And right now, they're clearly a weaker team than Hanwha and D+, I would say. Like, it's not just an underperformance, or it's not just an off day. Like, they've had too many off days stacked up together.
Yeah, I
Even
agree.
their fans are worried. Maybe when this new patch comes out and we move a little bit away from Tristana Corki Rumble, maybe that'll be like what puts them back on the right track. But I think it's not just the Tristana pick that has often, we're seeing fans blame a Faker's Tristana individually. Hasn't been great, but I don't think that's it. Everything seems just a little bit off.
Yeah, I actually agree with you. Obviously, the meta is rough for T1 right, but I think what's actually happened is that has led to issues we've seen this team have before in terms of synergy and individual performance come to light. Like, I think that even if you swap tomorrow to like a double pushing bot lane and like Zeus is losing counter matchups as Gnar. There's nothing to do with the meta. It's just right now they're just not playing well. I am with Valdez that I have seen this roster. I think this is one of the worst times. I still don't think this rivals the Popey time last year, because I think then people were also just really mad at the fact that everyone got.
I think it's worse
I think
because there's no Poby.
Well, no, I know, but the backlash for the other players who individually underperformed, I think, was worse because people were criticizing them more heavily.
Oh, yeah,
because
yeah.
they took such a nosedive between
between
what
the
are the
PogState
yeah.
sign, yeah.
Sorry, no, between before and after Faker was there. Right?
I'm just saying that like we're at the beginning of it.
Yeah,
That's fair.
That's
Yeah.
where I'm at.
That's
also,
the problem.
No,
that's
I'd
why
agree.
that's why I had that caveat of like worst performance in regular season without COVID, without Poby, without any of these other
That's
things
fair.
since 2021, right? Like 2021, they were in
Yeah.
like 6th place, 5th place, 6th place for a lot of that season as well. Well, they were with the 10-man
swapperoo.
roster,
Yeah.
So I want to see T1 perform because they're one of our most. I mean, they are our most famous team. Let's just not be. That's pretty obvious. But like,
They're the
they're a
most
team
famous.
that people
The most
enjoy
famous,
watching. A lot of really hype matchups, like T1 Hanwha, T1 Genji that we have coming up in the second round robin. We already had the rematch of the Hanwha series. You kind of really look forward to it. And then if T1 aren't playing at their best for reasons we can't fully explain yet, we can try to explain with the meta. We can try to explain with individual missed performances, but maybe we'll bounce back in coming weeks. It does mean that maybe we just actually heavily predict most of T1's opponents on the west side and just watch them stay in the middle of the pack. And maybe they do have that big run at the end where we get to playoffs and they make it through the gauntlet and go and power up like they always do, and maybe when they win the finals. But it's hard to predict that right now, except with like the T1 versus Genji always being a certainty type of like belief that we all have, which I still think is a strong possibility. But something has to change, and I don't know what that is going to be, because these players obviously won EWC, right? They traveled to Saudi Arabia, came back, underperformed against Bro, and we're like jet lag. But then rough performance against Hanwha, the second time, completely outclassed. And it's really concerning that like this is not a one-off, but actually becoming a trend.
For me, I think that oftentimes I don't normally side with the T1 fans, but I think on this one I have a lot of copium for this roster. I feel like it's just a temporary thing, and that their form is not very good, and they've lost confidence in themselves, in each other, and they do kind of look like what Chronicler was talking about, where it was with Poby. This time it's with Faker, which is more worrying, but they look the same. Like their faces look the same, where they look dejected. They're not playing their game. They have the ability. They haven't lost it. It's just that right now they're playing really poorly. So like when it comes to individual matchups, like next week, I probably will just predict against them because they are in their slump. But eventually they just figure out a way to make it happen. Maybe it's just they've lost a little bit of motivation after winning EWC, or maybe they're still jet lagged, or maybe someone's sick behind the scenes. Like Max is sick probably because he hasn't been able to sleep well since going to Saudi and back. Maybe that's happening
true.
with Faker or Keria or some of these guys that are making individual mistakes, or like Zeus who's TPing in to die like 3 times in a row for some reason.
Keria was just like, or Guma, which I think is generally the one guy that I'm like never tilt, just walking in on Jin.
Yeah.
Guma was like wandering into the middle of team fights and
Yeah.
dying all week.
You guys are right that this time it does look worse. Like individually it does look worse than like slumps I think in the past. But I am still confident that they'll get over it. It might take longer, and maybe they have to fight from like 6th place and it gets crazy. Or maybe it takes too long and they don't do well in playoffs. But I do think eventually T1 will bounce back. I just don't know when.
They may have to. I mean, it's a bit early to really say, but they may have to, if things don't improve, play in the World's qualifiers as well to guarantee their spot, because they have a ton of points, obviously, from going to the finals last season. But they're not a guarantee, of course, until they get to a certain point in the playoffs.
That's the
bracket.
first time since 2021, right? That was the Hanwha Gauntlet, where they played that 5-game series. That was a banger. Yeah, I'm with Eldis. I think that this team is clearly going through a lot of stuff right now, and the only thing that can fix a slump like this is just time. So I think they're just going to keep on being pretty bad. I do think it was the B&K series, right, where it looked like, because I think the Hanwha series is a bit more understandable given how good Hanwha are, but the B&K series to me was just like Carrier playing Brom and just walking in, missing everything.
Yeah.
And then, as you're saying, people TPing into die. I think that I
The
think
dives that were just
Yeah.
atrocious. Like it's almost like they were just giving up on it before it even began.
there is so much tape of this team kind of KTing it, where they go through these extreme, and I think this is the most extreme period. I would agree.
It's the telecom arc.
Yeah, it actually is for the because again, I feel like we've seen this even at EWC. They based on what I looked quite bad in the early matches, pulled it together.
Yeah.
Coming into Worlds, they weren't the favorite. Were able to even after a relatively rough Swiss stage, pull it together. So I'm sure that's going to happen. I do think it will not be for a while. Like I don't think they're going to not be in playoffs or something. I feel like that bar is still there. But yeah, it might be after playoffs. It might be because they need like a month of rest after Worlds, which won't be a month, but at least a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Because this roster's schedule has obviously been insane, and I think that like you can't fix burnout in while you're still doing stuff. Which I don't know if that's the reason, but I do think that would make a lot of sense.
Tons of media day, tons of ads, tons of
Jet lag.
you know, Faker's Hall of Legends recordings and stuff like that, and press events and stuff like that. So I mean, it is a grueling schedule, and when you're the biggest esports org basically in the world, you know, very clearly, and have the most opportunities as a result of that, like sometimes that can eat into your practice time, sometimes that can eat into your gameplay a little bit. So
Yeah, they've been third at every internet, like at lowest
least,
third
yeah.
every single time, right? So like,
And they also have like other like sponsorship obligations as well. And on top of that, they're the biggest celebrities that we have here. So it's, you think about the comparison of T1 and their responsibilities, right? Like they have to fly over to Europe and do like a Red Bull event here and there. And then there's another event that's coming up that they're going to have to fly over and do. They just came back from EWC. They also have to do ads. They also have to do all of these like spots
T1
with
fan
influencers, T1 fan events, all this sort of stuff. And
Home
then
ground.
yeah.
ground.
And then you compare that to, I don't know, Nongshim. Like, how many like of these like big obligations do these players have? And that's no shade towards Nongshim, but they can focus on like the main objective for these players is then to practice and to get better. And we've seen development from this team, right? And the reason why, you know, T1 we're not too worried is that we know that these players and are capable of amazing things and they're fantastic, but like you were saying, like burnout is a huge thing, and you could imagine that it's going to catch up at one point or another. The thing that worries me a little bit was the complete lack of coordination that we were seeing, and that shows, I think, Valdez, you mentioned it, the fact that there might be something in like within the team that isn't necessarily meshing at this point, to put it lightly, right? Like, hopefully that's something that they can remedy, because that's one of the biggest concerns I could imagine. Like when you've got 5 players that are so good at playing together that are somehow falling off the same page.
It's the
That's not
POG
it.
effect, right? Because this team is always so on the same page, and you see incredible turns on Barons. You see incredible, seemingly overextended moments for Faker in a side lane, and they actually turn this into a forced fight where they drag the enemy team to chase Faker, and then he kites his way back, and then they win this team fight where they actually outnumber the enemy team and stuff like that. In order to make those plays happen, which is completely their entire play style, right? With Faker's roaming, he's winning lane, you're making the plays bottom side, you're making those late game side lane flip arounds. If 2 players on the team have a different opinion about those moments and that clashes, then you can't play that style. And if that's the same style you've basically been winning with for the last 3 years, you know, it does get a little bit murky when you take part of that away. And I think that's why when Poby was in the mid lane and they didn't have that same 5-man unit with Faker being at the helm and being the voice, everything fell apart. And it feels like we're there again. So it may be just a shot call disparity. Like it may be one of the players is saying like, hey, I think these calls aren't right. And they're getting a little bit, or maybe not even saying it, but actually not following it because they don't trust it.
Yeah,
That kind of
collapsing comms.
Yeah, that kind of stuff
Probably.
happens all the time, but usually not to this roster. So that's what's the weirdest and scariest part about it, for sure.
Also not to this extent, right? Because it's like the individual level of play in that B&K series was just... It was...
I don't know. Maybe it's just B&K. Maybe B&K can like bring it out in their opposition because
I
it
think-
happened again today.
Yeah, but no, I think B&K just draft the one composition. They do that very well, and it's really punishing. So if you misstep, you just get varied. Varied. Yeah, it kind of works.
You can just ban Vi. I was saying that
They,
today.
play
against B&K,
teams
ban
tend
Vi.
to do that.
Well, that's also what's going to happen in like 2 weeks, and then B&K are again going to...
Yeah.
We've lived through this.
Yeah.
I have, in particular.
He has suffered through this.
Down to the Zeri priority, you know. Prince, he was the knight in shining armor.
I miss Prince.
Yeah, me too.
He's a
Any
good
Summit
kid.
enjoyers?
No.
No, not so much.
That part, I'm actually very happy with Claire. That part of the roster, I don't feel nostalgic
I had a
for.
lot of fun talking to Spawn about Summit when we were at EWC. It was very, very fun. Oh, but we digress, and we've been putting it off, but now it is time to put our money put our swaps where our do the thing where we swap the teams around.
I didn't bring any money.
Yeah, and don't put it in your mouth because that's disgusting.
That's not good.
What?
Yeah, it's never a good idea.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's time to swap some teams to see whether we've got our predictions correct or can make them more correct than they were in the past.
I have Degon on the table. Maybe we should let him go.
Yeah,
first.
we should let Digon go first. So let's play it so that we can have a listen. And
You guys can also watch it.
Where's the button?
Top
Top
left.
Press is, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. My Preds were not so hot because I was still new to the LCK.
Oh,
That's my
excuses.
excuse. And we only get one
Bad start.
change of teams. There's no slotting into
Yeah,
a
this is
position.
the Atlas excuse,
All
the
the analysts were
slotting.
making fun of me when I was trying to figure out the rules. Also,
Not
by
a
the way,
PogState
we don't know the
forever
grading
watcher said.
scale. So I have to just guess and make the biggest change. So the two difficulties on my current scale is that I have DRX in 7th, but they are not very good right now. And I think T1
I liked when he did the other video
at
that was really
3rd
fast.
and Hanwha Life at 4th and D plus at 2nd.
There's a little bit of
And
yapping
what I
going
want to
on.
do
Yeah.
is slot Hanwha Life into 2nd, but that's not allowed apparently. So what I'm going to
can do
do is I'm swapping Hanwha Life and T1 because D plus still have to play Hanwha Life. If they win, then D plus in 2nd place doesn't look so bad. It's too big of a gap for T1 to close, I think. And they've lost to Eastern teams, so that it just makes it tougher. Anyways, that's my move. We're moving Hanwha Life and T1.
Can you
so
say it
it'll
one more
be
time? I didn't get that.
Genji, D
What's
plus.
this guy yapping about?
He is yapping a
Hanwha
lot.
He yapped a
don't
lot.
be-
All right, it's done.
Don't be too mean
T1,
to Digon, guys. He's new.
Guangdong Freaks. Whoops.
He's new to the
KT,
LCK, yeah.
And I have to leave it. Oh,
So he spent
bad.
all that time yapping
DRX,
about making the easiest
VRX.
swap ever.
Yeah.
No,
Oh
I mean,
no, I have to move
that's not
T1
what I
into
think
4th
the
where they were likely
full
being
end
put
is,
Hanwha
but
in
because my
3rd.
Preds are the big
Any-
ones, so
any-
messed up, that's what it is. All right.
Thank you,
Wait, he
Digon.
still wasn't even
Bye.
done talking.
He still wasn't done
We
talking,
didn't
dude.
miss too much to it.
Yeah.
So any
Wait, and also just so that you know, like we were being mean to Digon, but we weren't being mean to him based on the LCK. We're basically being mean because he's a man that's supposed to be able to speak efficiently. That's his job, and this was not efficient.
Yeah, we are notoriously efficient with our
Well, he's a
podcast.
host.
Especially the
He's a
color
host. He's got to wrap it up. You know, he's got to wrap it up.
I do like his really happy,
Rapping.
carefree.
He finished pretty happily.
Rapping,
Yeah.
no yapping. I like that. That's a good guideline in general. So yeah, I was just gonna.
So
run-
he's now switched T1 with Hanwha Life, and now Hanwha's 3rd, T1's 4th.
Yeah, so I think maybe we can do ours together because Veldas and I basically have the same one, and I feel like T1 swapping with Hanwha, so T1 would be in 4th, which is a bit of a stretch, but not impossible, and Hanwha in 2nd.
Bit of a stretch, as in you think that they'd be 5th?
No, I think that they might still make 4th.
Oh, 4th, I think is the
that's
best
not a
they're going to
stretch.
get this season. 100%. I
Yeah,
don't think
it is
there's-
a stretch.
It's actually a good swap because T1 can get 4th, and Hanwha Life absolutely looked good for 2nd. So
Yeah.
we
And
had
there's
Hanwha
no
Life
way-
in 4th,
There's no way T1 breaks
and we had T1 in 2nd.
No,
so
exactly. So that's our
swapping
swap.
them
Yeah,
is
so
the
it's
best
a good
swap.
one.
I
it.
am
That's it.
also
No
a
yapping.
T1 swapper. I swapped. Unfortunately for me, I have Hanwha currently in 3rd, which it looks like they're going to get 2nd, but I couldn't swap them with T1 because it doesn't look likely a T1's going to get 3rd. So I ended up swapping T1 and DK. And the one thing that made me feel okay about doing that was the fact that DK actually beat Genji, even though on the standings it still says Genji is undefeated. It's really weird. But they did beat Genji, and then nothing happened in that second game. That
Aiming definitely didn't.
no,
E4.
no,
Yeah.
no, they definitely won. So
They didn't play
Um,
Ziggs, and what was it?
No,
was that?
Yep.
The
they
rest of that
won. There
comp?
was no game 3. It's fine. And so as a result, no, even though they did lose to Gen.G because of the reasons that were slightly mentioned, they could be the second best team. I don't think they are, but they could be. And so I'm willing to take the risk. But I had to put T1 down at least to 4th because I do kind of agree with Atlas. Like that might have been a mistake. Like they might be lower than that. I could have alternatively tried to like swap B and K up somehow, but there was just not really a good way to do that. That made sense because the KT would have to go too low in my pred. So
Yeah, the DRX definitely 7th really is. That one's gotten all of us.
Yeah, I'm my DRX spread is dooming me in a pretty severe manner. Not to mention the fact that I've got Bro in 9th, which is extraordinarily sad. I mean, there might be a world where DRX can get beneath them, and then I'll get DRX wrong, but in a less bad way, and so Bro can still be in 9th. That might be a possibility.
Could happen.
Because, I mean, if you think about it, like, Bro was, like, on a historic losing streak, but there's still only one match away from DRX. Like,
It's doable.
Yes.
Yeah.
The DRX definitely don't look great.
and they looked so promising at the beginning of the season. It was just
Yeah,
very
it
sad.
looked like a solid, like enough promise to get 7th place. You know,
Yeah.
we were like,
Yeah.
wow, like
Yeah,
Teddy's
right.
looking good. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sponges have
Solid
massively
7th.
improved.
Yeah.
Like I think they're definitely not going to playoffs.
so-
Let's not go crazy, but you know, yeah.
Yeah.
Not have a good day today.
What
but
about
that's okay.
Frog's Renekton? What about Frog? Where did he go? I don't know.
Where's
Yeah,
Rascal
I-
going?
Yeah.
Where is he going?
Who are these players?
I know that Rascal is not going to the team fight. That's where I know he is not going.
I'm
He's
so
definitely not
tilted.
going there.
That was actually the worst part about today.
This was a day of League of Legends today.
definitely a
I actually really enjoyed the B&K KT series. I know it was messy, but I that to me felt like B&K actually playing well and punishing a lot of the mistakes that KT was making. Second series was a bit more of a...
I love some self-aware East Side drafting. You know what I mean?
Right?
It's
Yeah.
self-aware. You
From
know what
Nongshim.
you're good at. Exactly. Well,
Yeah.
Nongshim as well as B&K as well.
Yeah.
You know what you're good at. You know what the enemy's going to try to do. You're just very
Do
self-aware.
the one thing. You just
Mhm.
one thing, one thing only.
Do you just give over everything that they're good at and then play what you're not good at because it's meta? That's the normal East Side way. But no, the self-aware drafting. Play what you're good at and ban the strong champions away. That's the way.
I mean, that's also how DK beat Gen.G in the game. Is because they played Lee
Yep.
TF.
Yeah.
It's a good lesson. It's a good lesson. So
You don't just have to be meta slaves.
and then is that all the... So Degon is the same one as us,
Atlas.
which is Homa T1.
And so mine is weird because mine's so close to being right, but it's wrong in almost every way. So I
Is
need
this the season
He
of
needs
actual
9
comments?
Sounds familiar.
I need
I
9
swap
swaps.
everyone?
I need 9 swaps, but it's different because I need 9 individual swaps this time.
But it's the same.
So I
That's worse.
right. But like my order is completely wrong. But,
But I
I've
felt like-
got groups correctly.
But I felt like I remember I looked
that
at
make
yours.
sense?
I looked at yours at the beginning of the week and I was like, man, Atlas is really crushing it.
yeah. But
What?
like if if DRX had a 1, for example, would have looked better.
If B&K did, if KT,
If KT had a 1, would have looked better.
yeah.
There's-
According to expectations, it was good, but
Yeah. And then today happened, and my everything's just on fire. But it's okay. We can't do all of the swaps. So I went with the one that I felt was probably going to be the most likely and also the sexiest one. Because it always feels better to have the top of the standings sorted
oh, it's a
out.
feeling one. Yeah, it makes
Right?
sense.
And basically what that's going to do is make all of our top of the standings look exactly the same. Pretty much.
So you went Homa second, DK third.
Yeah.
Good shout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which now, come to think of it, I kind of don't like. because
Oh, well.
right?
Feels bad.
Because Hanwha's still got to play against Gen.G. Hanwha still has Doran. Hanwha could still randomly lose a game, and then they definitely lose to Gen.G, and then DK is second.
D plus second, rise up. Yeah.
Right?
That's
I love DK, but DK is not getting second.
I
Why
like
not?
Lucid.
They're like
yeah, why not?
they have the same
Known
scoreline
D
right
plus
now.
and- Anti.
all know why.
He loves Lucid. What do you mean?
Okay,
I
so,
seem to be I seem to be out of the loop.
I'm out of the loop also.
okay, so there are two reasons, right? as much as I love Lucid and Showmaker both, I do also think that they're very reliant on the two of them actually having a good game. And I think that the Vi Lee target bans make it a lot harder. And then, because what we saw was the other plan for DK, which for some reason they keep trying and every time it keeps failing, was we're actually going to play for aiming. Not just have aiming in the side and have him hoover up gold, but actually like play towards bot side instead of through a mid jungle 2v2.
But the more that doesn't work, the more they're going to realize.
No,
that
I
it
don't
doesn't
think they
work.
will, because I think that
This is the LCK. That doesn't happen.
And I also think it's just how the team dynamic works. I think
Maybe we should like send little subliminal messages to.
I'm gonna call
Zephyr,
Zephyr.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
yeah. Well, no, but I think DK.
What's
Team
little
is Kangin
post-its
on.
that say like Ghost
Okay.
and aiming are the same.
So I think
King and
yeah.
King and strong side.
Yeah. Which I want, right? Like, and I want this team to do well, but to me, so Gen G does everything exceptionally well, right? Which is what makes them so good.
Yeah, that's why we're not
So
talking about
we
Gen
haven't
G.
talked about
They
Gen G
just-
at all.
they
It's
don't exist,
boring.
yeah.
They're too good.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone was planning on swapping them out of first.
no, I don't think so.
And on Gen G, and that's why they're so good
Gen
right now.
G and Bro, that's my
every
swap.
single player can carry. I think on Hanwha, 4 out of the 5 players can carry. And even, I'll give half of one to Doran. So 4.5. Because Doran
Carry is a weird word. He can be a reason that they win.
he got POG and he went like 7-0 on Jax. I don't even think he was that.
That's what I mean. Was it really
no.
a carry? It was just a Doran.
But that's
good. But it's
I
it's
think
confusing.
for DK, they're by far the best. Like there are one issue parties in politics. They're a one issue party, and I feel like they're by far the best out of those. But I do worry that it's easier to.
Which one issue party would you want to go to? If you were gonna go to a party that's based on one issue,
Just
which
looking at
issue
Max's
would it
face
be?
after he saw that?
But you get what I mean, right?
Yeah, I want to know what kind of party it would be.
Chronicler's definitely running on mid jungle.
Yeah, I'm running on mid jungle.
And he's got a strong vice challengers player running mate.
Exactly. And I think if they pivot from that, they drop off a lot. And I think we saw it in game 3 against Gen G, where they didn't have a great. There was Viego Ziggs, and then everything just kind of. And
What was the bot side again? I forget.
oh, it was Ezreal something.
Was it?
I think so. Yeah.
I don't think it was.
Was it
I
Kaisa?
think it was also weird.
Might be Kai. I don't know. But
Or
it.
maybe it was the top laner.
Yeah, top lane was GP. Oh no, it was Kalista Renata because I remember.
Yeah.
They
The
had.
Ziggs was into the center. Remember, they
The
kept trying to bomb
yes.
the center. and it didn't work.
Yeah, no. So what it was a, and I think that DK, by their nature, will have some amazing, like really cool angles, like the Lee TF. Love that. But I also think that sometimes they have a draft where it's like the same issue that T1 sometimes has, where you look at everything and you go, if you had one person that was like, I'll play Maokai, I'll play Ornn, that comp would have been amazing. And instead they had none of that. And it was GP, Ziggs, like it was just, they needed a Maokai or anything. And I think that they have a tendency to do that. And I think Hanwha are not nearly as creative, but they're a lot more consistent.
I think it's Showmaker. Remember the
Sure, yeah.
Kassadin Renekton, the last finals that wasn't Gen GT1?
When he was
Where
like,
they
"Ow, blind Cassidy."
they trolled in a finals and they still won?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was fun.
The free one summer.
I love
Yeah,
that.
that was great.
I love that.
Which is what
They
makes
kind
them.
of still have that energy.
Yeah, which is what makes them very like. I love that team. I love casting them. I love watching them. But I do think that for it makes sense. I also think, unfortunately, as much as I'm a Lucid stan, outside of Levi, he's still good, but he's not. He's not the same.
he can only genes.
I think that is like I think is Sejuani and Maokai both. Wait, what?
I just don't get it.
I'm so confused.
Levi's a genes.
Oh, that's actually a really good joke.
if
I
only
think
they'd got it.
yeah, no, it's really good. Outside
I
of
was like, Rel Jungle because of the pants?
Yeah.
Like, I was like, that's not meta.
The worst part was that I looked around the table, I tried to make eye contact, and I'm like, oh fuck, no one
Just
got
stared
there. Yeah.
blankly.
but it is
Yeah.
a really good. No, it's a great joke.
yeah.
But I think his Maokai Sejuani gotten better, right? But it's not to the same level. And against Humble Life, against Gen G, that's just not really gonna cut it. I think
Yeah.
third feels right.
I mean, I think he's Levi Viego though as well, right? Like,
Sure, I think it's
he's
Viego's.
still got
If
that.
they have a Leona. Or
Viego's just bad.
I think Viego's.
I don't like
you're a
Viego.
Viego hater.
I'm a known Viego
I think
hater.
Viego is
If you
only good in
Paperman
Divide.
TF though, then that could still work.
I think it's actually good at Divide. That's the one where I'm like,
Yeah, but
That's a
then
good
your
matchup.
opponent has an actually useful jungler.
How about Elise? I think Lucid's Elise is very good.
it is very good.
I would love that actually.
It's AP. Why didn't they use it during the double 80 carry meta? Probably because it's not very good.
No.
But it would have been fun.
So we all have the same top half of the standings.
Do I want to renege though?
You can't.
It's not allowed.
As long as you
committed.
R5, it's okay.
I mean,
Judge?
I haven't committed fully yet.
We need to get the commissioner. in
No,
there.
There
I
haven't
think you
been
can't
there hasn't
renege.
been any games
Can we get the
since
head
I
ref in
locked
here?
in.
Kion, head ref. Can he renege? Sorry. No,
So
I'm
if
just
I want to
joking. It's fine.
change
If
my
Max-
mind,
I'm
can
just
I do a
meaning.
different swap instead?
I vote no. I think that's cheating.
No, the board has decided.
Okay.
It
So
would have
does the
made it more
commissioner.
funny though.
I just think it would be. It's just fun to invoke the commissioner.
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
true.
The queen of Comic
gave-
Sans.
she
She
gave
gave us
the-
She gave it the no. If I was going to, I can't believe I keep looking at the spring
don't.
thing and like thinking that I'm going to see something that actually makes sense in my brain. What would I even do?
Bro to
Because like
first.
KT fifth makes sense. So do you know what? Actually, the based swap is to swap BNK Kwandong. Because I think Kwandong could get to 8th.
I think we should allow him to do that. I think that'll be funny.
I'm going to say no. I still don't think you should.
No,
should
no,
BNK
no
getting
swap.
to 6th is not likely though.
He gets the swap, but minus 5 points.
That's a lot of points.
Hell no, I ain't swapping. It's all good. Let's just leave it.
I appreciate the commissioner giving.
In
the
fact,
offer. That
what
was
if I
cool.
just chose not to swap anything and just let it ride? Let it ride. Just let it ride, baby.
Okay, does that give
You
him
let
extra
it ride,
point?
but
Does
you
that
get,
give me
you get
extra
plus
points?
1 point.
If I just choose not to
We're
swap,
gonna be here like 6 years in the future, and it's just the whole game is turned into a roguelike. I mean,
we get different perks.
Instead of poker rogue
different
or
items
slay the
after the
spire,
first
it's
swap.
slay the standings.
Slay this.
I thought you were going to say we're going to
Holy.
be here all night because Max is going to be like, she's going to be like, no. Then Max is going to be like,
Can I
can I
swap
swap Brendan's? Can I make a swap to the other three?
If I swap mine with yours, chronically, it'll be fine.
We still haven't started the episode somehow. Like,
Yeah.
Eventually, he's
start
like,
from
can
the
I
beginning?"
promote an academy team into the standings?
Just turns into fantasy league. Slay the
if team
standings.
gets promoted, can I get an extra swap?
If I get right what the format for LCK for 2025 is going to be, can I get some additional credit?
If I ever make an esports board game, that's what it's going to be called.
Actually, okay, so next season, why don't we make it so that you can only swap your predictions and somebody else's?
no.
No, that doesn't work at all. What you can do is that we
just trolling us now.
No. What you can do is that you all get your own swap, and you can swap. You can like jinx something. You can swap someone else's. But the problem is then what you do. Is
No,
you just,
no.
But like you just put bro first, and then what can you do? That doesn't work.
No. So what I'm saying is that like you choose 2 teams on yours and you swap it for the 2 teams on the other person's.
But then whoever, like, it makes a really big difference if you go first or last in that.
Right, yeah, but you don't get to say where they go. It's just they swap positions. You get their T1.
LCK has always been a very tier listy cookie cutter league in terms of standings and match outcomes.
Get back to the
However, this
script.
split this week in specific has been very interesting with all of the upsets that we've never expected to happen. All the LCK teams stepping up. What's happening?
What's happening?
Said Atlas.
What's happening?
What is happening, Wolf?
I love PogState.
That was like a lot of panic.
It's a coup
A
d'etat.
lot of panic happened.
It's a takeover.
Okay, so just to summarize, I know it kind of went off the rails there, and Wolf needed to very actively.
I needed to
and
go to the script.
Distressingly go to the script. Those are our swaps. They are going to look pretty similar as far as the top end is concerned, and the bottom end is going to be a mess. And we'll just see whether it does work out. And like Wolf was saying, there have been some upsets. Which ones haven't we spoken about? Oh,
All of them. Because we haven't had a PogState in a
upsets?
while.
yeah, but we like so far this episode we've spoken about
we talked
BNK
about
quite
the
a lot.
T1
Yeah.
swap or upsets.
So I think
Yeah,
the T1.
kind of.
Yeah, we talked about T1 a lot
T1,
already.
T1
BNK
context.
we've spoken about, but what we haven't spoken about, gentlemen, is the most important team here in the LCK.
Oh no.
And that is Bro.
Go on. Yeah.
It's Bro. And honestly,
Please continue.
I think that we need to ask the question of, can they do the 0-9
9-9.
and then get to the 9-9?
No.
No.
But I will say,
But they're
Bro's-
1-0.
No. Giga
Bro's
Chad.
series win rate before I introduced
bro.
Brositivity, 0%. After I introduced Brositivity,
Yeah, but
100%.
But it's not even
Brositivity,
that.
yeah.
It was Brositivity, and then immediately afterwards, Broptimism.
Broptimism, yep.
Optimism is a good one.
Also seized opportunities.
Yeah.
Don't make me feel like a bro anti for hating bad puns.
I mean, you
Please.
are.
But you
a
are a
known
bro,
bro
anti.
It's known,
so
yeah.
it's
And you're a good pun anti as well. We know that also.
Good.
I know it's an
Good?
oxymoron, isn't it? It's kind of
Good?
hilarious.
No. Actually, I think that it also gives the opportunity to talk about Kwangno, which we haven't really done yet either, and I think
Yeah.
is very warranted. I thought it was super cool to see Fate back. Like that, and, we joke a lot about Brion, but to me, they came into that series with a lot of confidence. I think the fact that Doiv actually, because I think Youngjae was one of my highest rated
I want Doiv
members
to
on,
stay.
Yeah.
I want him to stay.
Because, he's a giant and his name is Doiv and he seems very friendly.
We,
And I just,
we like Wolf and I spoke about this though. Like, you understand like the support jungle synergy now.
Yeah.
Where they tower over their like.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are
They can make
threatening.
eye
They
contact
have aura and they're 10th.
on stage. It's OP.
But specifically, the fact that Fate comes back in looks like he hasn't left, which is actually really impressive, given that a lot
he
of
almost
players.
looks better.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
he
well,
looked
I mean-
so sad when he was on DRX. You remember?
I
That was a
don't
really
know.
rough
Actually,
season.
I've completely
I
eliminated.
remember we were
the-
all
the-
just like,
the
"Oh
cro-
my god,
That
this
was
is rough."
Croco,
The Rascal
Croco
Croco
Barrel.
Fate. Yeah.
I mean,
Fate. That
yeah,
was.
but
And
that
he took a year off, and he looks great. He looks healthier. He looks happier. He's playing with Bro. He's vibing.
He was clearly so happy that he
Yeah.
won for them as well.
I mean, he just looked happy to be back and to kind of like forget about the stress. And
he had a
just
big
kinda play
smile
League of
even at the
Legends.
beginning of the series,
Yeah,
so it was
exactly.
really good.
His
Seems
Corki
like
was
he's
solid.
very happy.
Yeah, I mean, he looked good. Like it was pretty refreshing, to be honest, to watch him play. Even Envy looked better that day. Like he made some good plays.
Yeah. I remember, like, I was casting the series. I was happily saying that Envy was making good plays, and that is not something that I normally do.
Yeah.
I know that I struggle
Known
because he
Envy
has
anti.
had some
Vanty.
rough moments, and the bros are very close to my heart, and so it does hurt. But I'm not even calling for Samba anymore, which is just a crazy thing, because I was a big fan.
And same for me with Pulbe, honestly, because it clearly didn't work, right? The swaps. I think Pulbe is still a player I would love to see in LCK, but there's definitely also better environments to
He's just
try
not
and-
ready.
Yeah,
He just looks
Yeah.
too nervous. Like he has the
does.
ability, but he just can't show it. Like,
And I
he's one of
think-
those guys that
He was
obviously
also
cannot
never
show it.
really like. I feel like that DK roster that was so incredibly good was a product of Lucid Thanatos being extraordinary.
it kind of
and
it kind of depends.
sort of like the way that
So-
group of five worked together.
He was a lot worse in 2023, which is when
Yeah.
we had the official Challenger broadcast. In 2022, he was actually, I think he was a lot better. And I think he kind of,
Right, but then the
He's still slotted-
trajectory is the wrong direction, right?
yeah, which is fair. And again, like I'd obviously love him because I'm emotionally invested into that roster. But I think after that series, it should be Fate for the rest of the split, honestly. And even if he, Pro
Yeah.
still ends up losing, which they probably will, the vibe has changed and really shifted now that they got this win, which we've seen what a difference that can make for teams. Nongshim, like 2 years ago when they finally got that win, it was really cathartic. I
Yeah.
think that's what happened for Brion here as well.
Why do you guys think there are so many upsets happening? Is it like a meta thing, or is it just some teams are slumping that should be winning? Like obviously T1 is the big one, but
I also think it's mid-season, right?
yeah,
And you have a lot of teams that sort of start resting on their laurels and not wanting to pressure their players too much, right? Before they go into full crunch at the beginning of playoffs. I think maybe that has something to do with it.
unless you're CV Max.
I think every team's
Right,
reason
it's
is
just full
different.
Then it's the
crunching,
opposite, yeah.
I think every team's reason is different, right? Like I think T1 probably has
Yeah.
some burnout issues. I think Kwangdong might be the only one that has some similarities because I think Kwangdong does historically as a team over practice. They're like the old school Korean
Yeah.
train 12 hours a day type team
And collapse.
and collapse, right? So I think they have some burnout problems. I think for KT's loss today, it's more about BNK showing up and kind of trapping them there.
Yeah, let's not ego play every single
Yeah. And I do think that, like, a lot of people are thinking that Hanwha beating T1 was an upset. I think, I predicted T1 would bounce back, but they didn't. But that one is not really on the list of upsets. Like, all four of us knew that was likely to be a very volatile series.
After they lost to being,
I thought it was very obviously
I wanted to change
Hanwha
my
favored.
pred.
It's not even like
Yeah, but I think what Velas was saying as well was that prior to that, I feel like there was still a realistic chance of T1 bouncing back in the way they've done before, because the previous Hanwha series was very close. I think after the BNK series, I was kind of like, because we predicted at the start of the week, right? Like, it's not happening. I really like Wolf's point, actually, because it's not just looking at the teams that lost. Why? Because for Kwangdong, it's very obviously just the classic Kwangdong collapse, which we all warned Deacon about, and he was like,
he was such a denier.
Certainly not.
He wanted to believe,
yeah.
and I get it, because I think every single one has been there.
It's every
With Kwangdong.
season. Every season, it's the same. Yeah.
It's different splits as well.
Yeah, for me, last split, I was a believer. I didn't think they were
I
gonna
think for
collapse.
me it was
Yeah.
early because it was Bulldog just coming in. I was like, man, this is gonna happen, and then obviously didn't. And then the BNK wins. I think it's just BNK, and I think DK also got the win over Genji for that reason. Just saying, you know what, screw this meta. We're not gonna win trying to play what is currently meta. Like obviously Vice is and like. It's not that the entire comp isn't meta champions outside of Diari, but it's just playing that specific dive style, which they have so much experience with.
I think there is something to be said about the meta. Not that this meta specifically causes upsets, but it's that it was such an ingrained meta in every single
So
team.
rigid.
So that
Yeah.
every single team was playing the same thing, that immediately once teams begin to figure out new stuff, teams that aren't ready for it and are so ingrained in the meta just get caught off guard and they lose games, right? And that happened to T1, I think, where they're like, we're going to do this meta perfectly, and we're going to make Owner play Ivern. And that didn't work, and there's other issues there, obviously. But also BNK Fear X saying, screw this meta, we'll just play our own thing. Like you were just saying, like we were saying all day on the cast, like, I think it's a little bit of like, we were so stuck, and then finally the energy ball, like everything that was being sucked in and now is just exploding as people explore different opportunities.
I think, just briefly, I think that we're at the end of this patch as well, so we're going to have a new patch next week. As you get closer to the end of a new patch, especially, like, sometimes you have a patch where not that much changes, but this seems like it's going to be a mega big change with the nerfs to the mid-80s. Maybe you're already kind of prepping for the new meta, and you're trying to move away from that and not rely on that, and then some mistakes get made in draft, or you're thinking about the live patch that you've been playing solo queue on, and then you're like, oh, I got to play Tristana again. I don't know what's going on, but that could play a factor, or play as a factor in some of these upsets we saw this week, especially.
I had just a little bit of like a thought experiment, I guess. And that is to like pose the question of maybe the reason some of these like off meta like drafts that we've seen cropping up, maybe some of the reasons why they're actually successful is that the meta read isn't necessarily quite as harsh as what we've seen, because we've seen so many teams just be like, you have to run double 80 carry, and it's either a tank in the jungle alongside it, or you've got like just as many or you've got like a Zyra or some sort of like
Carries.
Like caster DPS from the jungle, and like that's been what good has looked like for the past 3 weeks or something like that. Maybe that's just not actually as far up as they thought, and maybe like they could have been playing just their style and it would have been fine anyway.
Yeah,
maybe like the balance is actually closer.
No, I partially agree. I think that because it's important to remember Nidalee Prior, for example, in the last series of MSI, like, or in the TES series, the Nidalee started coming up. This was before any of the item changes. Like, this wasn't. I think I'm like 99% sure, but this was before 1410. So Blackfire, Torch, and Faded Ashes weren't introduced yet, which is what led to the insane boom of AP junglers afterwards, right? And we already saw the trend kind of shift towards that. And I feel like meta trends in general are always partially actual strength of champions, but there's a reason why the meta in Worlds Play-ins is always different from what ends up being relevant in knockouts. And I mean, Play-ins is also, but even from groups, the top teams will be playing different stuff in finals versus what was being played at the beginning. And as Wolf was saying, the last 2 patches have basically been pretty similar in what was relevant. And I think teams have just been like, why would we adhere to this? Not just because it's changing, but because it's clearly not working. And if you're playing a dive comp, or you're playing into a dive comp for the first time in, like a year? Like actual, like hard...
Yeah, proper
Viari, like Vitalia is a little bit different.
And Rakan.
Yeah,
Don't
exactly.
forget.
Yeah, and Zeri and
Vi Ari with Callista Renata as well. Like that was
Renekton was there.
Yeah, exactly. So like, I feel
Canon.
like which again is why I expect B&K to kind of taper off. But those type of strategies, when you haven't played into a Pokemon in a while, you see teams just walk into River and take a quarter of their health, just from mistakes they won't make like 2 weeks later.
On the note of the meta, like it's the final day, so it's over. At least this patch, right? We'll see what changes. Touch. I don't know if this is wooden, but
Tristana did get.
I think there is.
She's
wood on
getting
so
5% win
I
rate.
just wanted to say, this for me has been, since I joined the LCK, my least favorite meta by a large margin, because there's no playmaking in the mid lane. It's just 80 carries, right? And
But you can rocket jump Buster Shot like
We had
Lee
Azir.
Sin.
yeah, it's the
Azir's
insect
back.
shot. But the Azir is cropped back up again, right? But give me the Talia, give me the Azir, give me the Orianna, give me the Syndra, give me the Ryze. We can skip Victor, that's fine. But otherwise, I really was so bored with how the game slowed down. One team's 4,000 gold ahead. There's no engage on the mid. There's no playmaking. You're just an 80 carry that can't be near the other one because he's further ahead than you in a volatile matchup. Then you just sit back and lose the game because you can't make a play. You can't set up a flank. It's so hard. I'm so glad we're hopefully moving away from that, especially with AP junglers like Nidalee not also really being able to engage and just throwing spears. Brand, just throwing damage, not actually doing anything, just leads to a lot of stale and boring and slow
I also
gameplay.
feel like when there are champions that are obviously just broken, busted OP, like Rumble or eventually Tristana, it really sucks up a lot of the bans to the point where we see a lot of the same stuff, where it's like, okay, well, Red Side has to ban Rumble and Tristana every time, or most of the time, so we see like Ezreal first pick
Every time as well, yeah.
like 7 out of our last 8 games or something ridiculous. I mean, we had Nidalee in the Gen G DK series, but the point is, it feels like we get kind of stale metas when stuff is so strong that it just can't be seen, and we just ban the same
And
things.
then one of the biggest,
Like tank junglers.
one of the biggest individual game wins, again, like DK Gen G, is just going back to a 4-year-old composition.
Yeah.
That Showmaker's just like, I can play TF, which is just not, like, we haven't seen any APTF.
Apart from
By
Sherman when
anyone.
he played it the last
Yeah,
time.
okay, but I mean, that's still, the fact that that's still possible, that makes me very happy.
And that's the reason why I thought about it, right? Is
Yeah.
because, like, if you think about it, like, the Nidalee point is such a beautiful one, right? Because that's Canyon and Shun. Like, these are Nidalee players. These are people that, like, that will play Nidalee when it's off meta. Maybe that's the reason why people think it's meta. Because it came in and people can't play it because they don't draft around it, right? That doesn't make it a meta pick necessarily. It makes it a meta pick because everyone's picking it, but it's not necessarily good.
I just wanted to say on that exact note that you're making, I've seen so many like people on Twitter and stuff always complaining like, stop trying to play like Gen G, and they're not even in the LCK. They're like talking about LCS teams or LCC, like, stop playing
is
like Gen
true.
G. Just stop doing it. You can't play Nidalee. You're not as good as Chovy, whatever. Like,
Yeah, 'cause-
that's exactly why. Because they see these top players play. They're like, we can do it. I want to do it as well. That's the meta. And then everybody copies and it becomes
And it's
the
not
meta.
the meta, it's Gen G.
They just
like, this
make
is the
it the
thing.
meta.
Like, that's not what the meta is. The meta
Mm-hmm.
should be like the champions that fit and that you can play well. Like, it's not like, oh, this is what Gen G's playing, therefore it's the meta. Because obviously what that's going to do is hold Gen G in first place forever.
Yeah.
Because they just get to play whatever
never
they
get
want and
challenged.
everybody else is worse than them because this is exactly what they're good at. Like, it's weird.
Yeah, it's also like Nidalee Corki. It doesn't actually sound like a good combo. Like that has negative mid jungle pressure.
Yeah, of course. It's just Chovy's
But
best champion and
that's
Canyon's
the
best
point,
champion.
right? And I think that is as Wolf was saying. I think I've had metas that I like less because I like the jungle matchup at least in this one. I think mid lane is horrible. I'd still take it over Corki Azir, like old Corki, because there was no action in that one. I think that this is just the reality though of a pretty high pace. I know 2 weeks doesn't feel long, but a pretty high pace patch cycle and regular split. There's just no real time for teams to really innovate. And I think that's why whenever we get to playoffs, whenever we get to MSI, not so much because it's such more consolidated. But like Worlds last year was also a story of the meta just taking leaps. About 2022, I think, was the best example. I'm pretty sure we broke like all the records for most played champions throughout that Worlds because there was.
I remember that like the graph, the huge table thing with all the different champions. That was very fun.
And I think that's unfortunately we're like in the middle of summer. Teams are just going to autopilot. That's just the reality, and that really sucks for people who watch every single game. Which is
we had so many changes obviously leading into this season, and like Corky was reworked, so that's kind of exciting. We had Skarner reworked as well, right? And so he became super meta.
It's okay.
But like, though, this is exactly the point I'm going to get into. Though it feels really frustrating to me that we had like, okay, the new shiny thing, and then it's giga broken. It has to be played every game, and then it's like, let's get the Nerf hammer out and smash it because it's never going to be played ever again. Like, I wish we had a little bit more of the middle ground there because it feels like the last few patches for big stuff is just like, it's too strong, it's too weak, it's not viable. Like, there's no like viable like. You know, Azir's in a place right now. Talia's in a place right now. I think where it's like, okay, it's not giga broken, but it's got a lot of power. It's very relevant. Remember Rise back in like 2021 was like very niche, but played every now and then into like Lucian, for example, just shove waves into him. I hope that we can come to that place to where we get diversity, but also like a healthy meta, and I don't have to see Rumble at like 99%.
I don't think that's up to the
challengers.
Yeah, I don't think it's up to the. Yeah, but it's not. I don't think this is on the balance team to do that. I think that like coaches can just draft more champions. I think like Skarner, for example, wasn't gutted. It was just nerfed. It still does the stuff that Skarner does. Like, he still has Impale. It's like a ridiculous ability. Can still wander through walls. Like, the champion can't lane as well, but I still think that it's like...
It's definitely jungle viable, I would say.
We know that, like, it's still playable. There's, like, a bunch of stuff that's very... Like, Rise is another good example. Wasn't actually touched. Kane played it. Its current iteration.
There's just so much drafting in the LCK, I feel like there were so many casts, especially for me, where I was casting it and looking at the draft, and I'm like, they literally just picked the best tier list champion that was next on the list. Like, okay, Tristana and Corky were banned, so we picked Azir. Oh, that was banned, and then we picked Yone. And that was banned, and then we picked Lucian or whatever. I feel like that happens very often where teams don't think too much about the comp. They're just like, we need the best thing that will lane well, so we're playing Cassante again. Or Gnar again, like there's no thought process of like what would really work well in this comp, which is why we were all so happy by BNK, like picking Kennen and picking Rakan with the Arivi and stuff like that when it's not necessarily super meta.
Yeah, that's like, I think that's definitely on the teams in terms of finding other stuff that works still, and I do agree with you in that just because Skarner's nerf doesn't mean he's completely out, and just because he's well, honestly, they probably do. The Tristana nerf, like she's probably completely out, but
which is good.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I wish Tristana would be like where she was when Bulldog was like, oh, mid Tristana's a thing again, and it's like niche but still strong, still viable. And you think about all these picks because casting drafts this season for me, and I think for everybody, you already know what's coming next. It's like not even big brain. When we call it,
going to pick like, Leona.
Like, well, no, everybody knew.
But
Twitch chat knew.
They picked Leona.
Yeah, but I'd argue that is every like couple of weeks in without major patch change in the LCK for the last.
I don't know about that.
I really think
Lucian, Nami, Zeri, Lulu.
Yeah, exactly.
Players.
Like we've
that meta was better than this one.
I like this meta better, personally.
I think that specifically the jungle matchup being a lot more interesting.
I like the different AD carries we get.
I think there's been a lot of variance in every lane.
But
outside of, like, as soon as you ban the Corky Tristana, even mid lane's pretty wide open.
Yeah, and then again, I think
there's
that
a lot
this
of
is just
Renekton, though, which is not great.
Azir, Yone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God.
He's that too.
Sejuani. Yeah. But
there's a list.
But again, like we've had this.
Alistair,
this goes back to 2021 when it was like Udyr Hecarim trade every single game.
Yeah.
I just think that during the regular split, good teams just want to try and like figure out what's actually strongest, so they're just going to try and abuse whatever. And lower tier teams are going to emulate that even when they probably shouldn't. I feel like that's just always going to be how it is until we get to best of fives.
I imagine there's probably a fair bit of like, we don't want to have to reveal a whole lot of innovation earlier because we want to be able to hold that for when we hit best of five.
For the top teams, for sure.
That sort of stuff.
It's definitely a region, and it always has been, not even just in League of Legends, like in Valorant, I would say to a certain extent, in StarCraft 2, Brood War. It's not a innovation region, it's an iteration region. Somebody innovates, and everyone goes, wow, that's real strong. And then it's like, just get better at this one thing. We just got to practice the one thing and get better at it.
Slam this build order 1,000 times.
Yes.
Which is why G2 keeps having like really good first series, and then...
Because they innovate.
Yeah, and they innovate really well, and they're still really high-level players, but then by the second... Like, we saw this at MSI, we saw this at Worlds, but then by the second best of 5, it's night and day.
Yeah.
It's really... Actually, looking at the upsets, right? I feel like half of them are... And mostly the BNK ones, but I'd argue the Bro ones to a certain extent as well. Half of them... And even you could argue that Nongshim 2-0ing today was a little bit surprising. Half of them are meta reads, and then the other half are... some mild collapsing happening, which I think is interesting.
But it's also like a lot of them also are
mild glow ups as well.
I think it is a bit the glow ups, and it's also like, let's just play to what we're good at instead of like being dictated to by what is considered the best.
That's what I want, and I think we're seeing it, and it does make me happy.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't too happy when Ju played Senna today, but then I was happy when he played it well, and the team played well around it, kind of.
Yeah.
Guger did attract a lot of attention, and they kept attacking him, but
and
that makes Senna really, really good, by the way.
And there's good versions and bad versions, right? Because, Deft played Neela today, and I'd prefer that never.
But that also forgot what dive comps do.
Yeah, we went over that, actually. They did really set up, like, I think that was a BNK draft. Like, they set up a really good, because there was no Ezreal, no Xayah, no Caitlyn. So there weren't actually a lot of, we landed on a Senna comp, but there weren't a lot of AD carries left that you can play into dive.
He hovered Jinx, and we were like, please, no. Not that one, not Draven either.
Because the Neela was obvious. There's only one player that should play Neela, and he isn't playing it, so don't.
Yeah.
Draven does hurt people with his auto attacks, and he also, has big golden flows.
Yeah, but he would also like even if he's like 3k gold up, if you're in a team fight.
I'm just saying, Neela's not really hurting people with her auto attacks, and she's not really.
Draven would have been better.
Using gold well.
So. Jack shows Cogmore. That would have been the pick.
Well, the problem was that they had Azir, because unironically, if they go like...
They also already had Alistair, didn't they? Which would have been a...
Yeah, if they end up going... Because they pick Senna, and they can go like Senna Seraphine. If, God forbid, they have a AD carry mid, and they pick like Swain into a dive comp.
Ooh, clean.
Yeah, but they didn't. They picked Alistair Leela, and they got... they got boomed.
Well, I mean, they kind of boomed themselves. That first dive was like...
Yeah, second dive
was sort of the end of the game.
I think that was all of Death's 4,000 damage was that second dive. That was all of his damage.
Yep.
He didn't do anything else after that.
Yeah,
I'm
so there's
happy
good
the upsets are back.
Yeah.
Because it was a bit of a tier list season.
It has
up
been.
Until this.
It's certainly like the last couple of weeks, right? Or like this week. It's just like BNK just coming in and saying like, you can't disrespect us, and like slapping down, and then Genji losing that one game, which I think we're all extraordinarily excited about, because
Are you sure they didn't lose two? I saw them win game 2, and then I went to make a sandwich, and I came back, and it said like, "See you guys in a few minutes for game 3."
Wolf, what?
I'm pretty sure they won game 2. I'm like 99% sure.
I felt like I had a weird feeling during that series as well, because like so much of me wanted the status quo to continue, and to like. I don't want Genji to collapse, because I think that this team is really, really good, and I think that like having a team that represents good in our region is good. But also, DK, like after that game 1, I was like, maybe they can win Worlds again. Like maybe this is happening.
And up until the point where aiming, like there was a very small window where he hit the Freeman ultimate, which was amazing, and like the health bars are low. And the fight setup position for Genji isn't that good.
Would you back up and set up around the dragon and try to continue to poke to push them out, then slowly take it, or B, arcane shift into enemy engage?
Yeah, and then he died, and that was the.
I did watch the game. I did see them lose.
You weren't making a sandwich.
I wasn't making a sandwich. Nobody makes sandwiches in Korea.
That's true, actually.
They don't really even have that much sliced bread here.
You can get a good ciabatta from traders.
You know what this all started with was KT beating T1 after the unanimous prediction at the homestead.
Yep.
Thank you, KT.
Yep. It's always KT's fault
It's
in the end, and
everything.
that's what we need to learn.
Everything revolves around KT, whether we like it or not.
And it's the best because they are actually in the middle all the time and forever.
Zero.
And it's
5-5.
It's beautiful, isn't it? What a time to be alive. But I think that's probably all we've got time for this episode of the PogState. I know that it's been a little bit all over the place, a little bit higgledy-piggledy, but we appreciate you guys sticking with us, and let us know how stupid we are for our predictions as well. If you have any suggestions for what our swaps should have been, and you've got the big brain strats, please let us know. I'd love to read them. That would be absolutely fantastic. But, yeah, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week. Not next week, in a couple of weeks, for more PogState. Bye-bye!
Bye.